Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Glimmer Gang. I am one of your hosts, Shawn, accompanied by. That's where you introduce yourself, man.
Really? Yes, it's me, Blake, here with Shawn, and we're going to be talking about the Emerald cards today.
Very excited about this. I love Emerald, as you know, so this is going to be a lot of fun. And we have some pretty spicy stuff here, too. Emerald, I don't think disappointed.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff in Emerald, so I will go ahead and start us off. All right, so we'll begin with Arthur, trained swordsman, who is a 4 cost inkable 4/3 with 2 lore, with beautiful art, and I feel like it's a solid draft pick.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely a solid draft pick. He'll definitely see play in limited. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's a world where we're going to see him played in a constructed field. That being said, this might be one of the best arts in the whole game so far.
I agree. Especially one of the last ones revealed. I was just so stoked to. I feel like him and Honey Wizard kind of like started and ended the whole. This art for set two is going to be
Oh,
amazing.
completely agree. Completely agree with you. All right, let's move on to number 2 out of the Emerald cards in the set. We have Beast Relentless. He is a 6 cost inkable 4/5 with 2 lore and the ability Second Wind. Whenever an opposing character is damaged, you may ready this character. Spicy. Very, very spicy.
This isn't a jaunty video, mind you.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Um, but yeah, dude, the stat line. I mean, for a 6 cost, it could be better, but for what he does, whenever an opposing character is damaged, so that's in any way. It doesn't matter how the damage happens. It just wants damage to be happening, and this card is pretty interesting to me because it's one of the few cards that can ready that doesn't say this can't quest for the rest of the turn.
Yeah, it's basically Ariel for
Yep.
Emerald. And it just runs off of pinging damage. I mean, the obvious weakness to it is resist, so we'll have to see how big resist is in the meta, but I feel like it could still find a place because it's really only Sapphire and Steel that have the resist.
That's true. That's true. I do have a feeling that we're going to see a Sapphire Steel build that does a fair amount better than the one from set 1 did, because I know people were trying to run Sapphire Steel in set 1. It didn't quite get there. I think with this set it definitely gets there, and like you said, you will see a little bit of setback if your opponent's using resist, but at the same time, as long as you can hit it for even 1 damage, like that, and that's another thing about this card is
Right.
it doesn't care about how much damage you're doing either. You do 1, you do 6.
Yep.
He's going off. So we'll see. I think he'll see play. It really, like you said, it depends on how much of the resist he's play. Which, let's face it, I think it's going to see a lot of play.
Yeah. Another thing for me is just some of the ping stuff is a little too slow because most of them don't do it until the turn after, where you can exert them. So you're either relying on some actions or into play, and the ones that enter into play, like Tinkerbell, ping a bunch of stuff at once, and that's only one trigger.
I
So
definitely think Steel Robin Hood sees play with this guy. Just the ping for 1. I
yeah,
think that sees play personally.
maybe even Plasma Blaster sees some play.
Honestly, this kind of card is what could bring Plasma Blaster into the meta and into the field, because it didn't see any play at all before. It just wasn't that what damage it does just isn't enough. But with this, you're getting to ready, and you can either quest or challenge. Like, it's pretty awesome. So I think we'll see a lot of fun stuff with Beast. So
All right, let's just go ahead and head on to our next card with Beast's partner Bell, Bookworm. a 3 cost uninkable 2/4 with 1 lore, with the ability of use your imagination. While an opponent has no cards in their hand, this character gets 2 lore. Definitely not the 1 cost archer in training that a lot of us were hoping
Right.
for
Yep. Yep.
for the Floodborn Bell, which we'll talk about in a minute. But it definitely feels backwards because this one wants the hand to already be empty, and the one that shifts is the one that empties the hand. So it feels a little backwards. So I feel like maybe in a future set we may get another cheaper bell that the Floodborn can go on, but it's not happening this set, I think.
No, yeah, you're right. It's a shift over, so it doesn't feel quite as good. It's still doable, but like you said, it does feel very backwards. I agree with that completely. The abilities feel like they should have been on the other cards.
Yeah, I think maybe you'll run a couple of these in a discard heavy deck, but yeah, I don't see like a whole play set of these being in a deck because the effect is too conditional.
It does feel that way. I know that there is whispers of hand control becoming a prevalent deck in this new set, and I think she has a home in that. But like you said, I still don't know that that you see a full play set. Like I feel like you maybe after you've gotten your opponent to discard down a ton, then you drop like her and try to close out. But
Hmm.
beyond that, I don't know. I don't know if she sees more play than that, but we'll see. Speaking of Bell, let's talk about Bell Hidden Archer. She is a 5 cost uninkable 3/3 with shift 3, 3 lore, and the ability Thorny Arrows. Whenever this character is challenged, the challenging character's player discards all cards in their hand. I mean, you kind of want both Bells on the battlefield, is what it feels like. You want them on there separately.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not shifted onto each other. That's why I feel like maybe one day we'll get that other bell that this bell wants to shift on.
Hopefully. All in all, though, pretty good card. I mean, a lot more of the 5 drop, 3 lore. What are you going to do about it? The Emerald has been that kind of just cemented itself in set one. It just seems to be doing more in set two.
Yeah, I definitely see some like multiplayer politics
Mm.
taking off with this. Go ahead and quest with her when you get her out and tell your buddy, hey, give this other person's character reckless so they can attack and discard their hand.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right.
But yeah, I'm not entirely sure if she sees play this set.
Yeah, she wouldn't be a bad. Again, she feels like she's helping close out the game, not really making your discard game plan that much better than it is. So
Yeah. And plus, the later into the game, how many cards is your opponent actually discarding when
right, it's true.
or and they can play out their hand and discard nothing.
Right, right. But I mean, as we'll see going through the rest of the Emerald cards, there are a lot more discard ways to make your opponent discard. So who knows? Until
Yeah,
we get another month or so along, and we actually everybody has time to sit down and play with these cards. Then we'll see. Then we'll really know. So
yeah. We'll move on to Bucky Squirrel Squeak Tutor, who is a 2 cost inkable 1/1 with 1 lore, who has Ward and the ability Squeak. Whenever you play a Floodborn character, each opponent chooses and discards a card. Definitely goes into Emerald Floodborn heavy deck. Definitely pops off in multiplayer. And you may even run them in a discard deck if you play enough Floodborns. And I just think he's solid with Ward. You just plop him on the board and until grab your swords or be prepared comes out. He's sitting there pretty safely.
Yeah, I agree. What I've been thinking about too is the each color got their own Floodborn Matters card. Chances are, if you're gonna do the Floodborn Matters strategy, you're gonna probably use both Floodborn Matters cards, like because you're using two colors when you build a deck generally. So you're gonna get more payoffs than just him. Like this payoff's great. Don't get me wrong. I love that each opponent chooses and discards a card. That I love that. And like you said, with like you've already said, this is going to be really good politics stuff. You know, you're like, hey, like you can use it as a bargaining chip or a bargaining tool, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and yeah, it pushes forward the discard game plan too. So I like him, and Bucky's awesome. Like, let's Ward too. You know, come on, could be a lot worse. Once you
Oh yeah.
stick him on the board, you every time you flood shift something or play a floodborn, it's happening whether they want it to or not.
Yeah, and that's what I like about these two is play of Floodborn, not you have to
Yep, exactly.
shift. Yeah, it makes them a lot more viable, in my
Exactly, because
opinion.
you can do it either way. You can play it or shift it, and that's awesome. That's so cool that you can do that like that. Us also, I'm sure you've already noticed this, but we got a plethora of shift two characters in this set. Not necessarily in this color, but we got a ton of shift two characters, which is really good for that strategy.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's move on. Our next card is Cheshire Cat, always grinning. It two cost inkable 3/2 with one lore vanilla. Love the artwork. The artwork is fantastic. I don't know that it sees play though. It's a vanilla. You know, it's okay. It'll do work in limited, but
Yeah, it's a nice stat line, and when I first saw it, I was considering it for the Emerald Sapphire deck that I run. I was going to run it over Phil, just that extra health,
sure,
and then Corella Deville came
right.
along and had the conditional evasive. So
You're like, well, that's what
I'm
I'm
like,
going with.
yeah, yeah, there went that plan. But it is a very nice card, and he probably will see play if you're playing this next card. If you want me to go ahead and move on to
All I
that.
want to say is you're absolutely right, and I was just going to touch on that myself. So let's move on. Let's hit the next one.
All right, we have another Cheshire Cat. From the Shadows, 8 cost inkable 5/6 with 2 lore, shift 5, evasive, and the ability Wicked Smile. You exert this character and then you banish chosen damaged character, which I feel like he'll want to go with Beast
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and be in that ping deck.
I'm seeing
Uh,
him in Steel Emerald. Yep, I absolutely see him in
yeah,
Steel Emerald. And that added evasive, you know, you're not as afraid to exert him to get rid of something because that there's no crackback. They have to have a piece of removal.
even even with that, he's a 5/6,
True.
so I'm not too afraid of
Yeah,
crackback because he's probably also taking out whatever's cracking into
it's a
him.
good point. It's a very good point because I mean, it's going to already limit them to things that have evasive that can crack back.
Yeah,
So, and I mean, unfortunately, a ton of the evasive things don't have great stat lines. So,
not too. Yeah, so it's gonna take a couple things or just some straight up hard removal to get rid of
right,
them.
because any of the other big evasive stuff, I don't think can shift. So you're this is hitting probably a turn or two at least before something big enough with evasive can take it down in one. So you're almost assuredly going to it's going to be a 2 for 1. It's not going to feel good.
Oh, you get this
Oh
one.
yeah,
You're getting all the
oh
good ones.
yeah. Our next card, honestly, I'm going to put it out there right now. I love the fact that this feels like a deep cut for me because she's part of the Mickey gang, but like one of the side characters, arguably. We have Daisy Duck, Secret Agent. She is a 4 cost inkable 2/3 with 2 lore with the ability Thwart. Whenever this character quests, each opponent chooses and discards a card. That's just lovely.
Yep, solid. Like this will be a staple and not even just discard decks, just a solid 4 drop that can go almost
Yeah,
anywhere.
it's true.
Questing for 2, and she makes you discard. Like, uh, I feel like for the deck I've been running, I feel like I would run her over Hans. I know Hans has the 1 extra lore, but having that ability to disrupt my opponent at the same
Exactly.
time that I'm questing, yeah, I feel like it's too good to pass up.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, honestly. I really, really enjoy her being able to get that much value, even if she can only go once. Even if she can only quest once, which chances are you're going to have a way for this to. I'm looking at this through an eye of like I want to be able to protect her so I can do this over and over again. So that's the like you said, like in a Emerald Sapphire build, I think she does even more work. So we'll see.
Speaking of Daisy Duck, we do have Donald Duck, Perfect Gentleman, 4 cost, Inkable, 2/5 with 2 lore, Shift 3, and the ability Allow Me. At the start of your turn, each player may draw a card. Our very first start of turn effect. And
And it's a group
boy,
hug
howdy,
effect.
it's a group hug. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, just really spicy for your opponents to deal with because they want to draw
Hmm.
2. So he may just get to keep questing for 2 lore for a few turns
Absolutely.
before they, yeah, decide to
And
answer
then when
him.
they answer him, he's got a 5 body. Like that's where you want to be with this type of card. You want a big old butt on this type of card. So especially in multiplayer where he obviously shines. And this really feels to me very reminiscent of how some cards feel in Commander in Magic the Gathering. This is very much, like I said, it's group hug strategy where you're basically currying favor with all of your opponents by doing beneficial things for them and yourself. So this is definitely that type of card. I love that it's in Emerald. I love that it's a Shift Donald. That's pretty awesome. Because he's generally hot-headed and angry and not the perfect gentleman. So this is a different view on our old pal Donald here. They did great though. It's a fantastic card. And shifting he shifts onto Ruby Donald rather well. Maybe not.
Yeah, Ruby
Yeah,
Donald.
maybe
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
not the next card that we're going to look at, but he definitely shifts on Ruby Donald really well. So you could do some really fun multiplayer shenanigans with an Emerald Ruby deck, I think.
Even without shifting, I think he's
Oh,
playable
sure.
because it's just
Yeah,
4.
I could see that.
4 costs. You're only saving
True.
1. I would play him on 4 as is because he doesn't need to be dry for his ability to take effect because either way it's not going to proc until it gets back to your
That's
turn.
true. You hit the nail on the head with that one. And honestly, I didn't even really think about it, but he doesn't have to quest. He doesn't have to exert at all. He just has to be there at the start of your turn, and it happens. So
Yep, he just has to be there, which means you can just quest away and your opponent will decide if they want to get that extra draw next when it comes
right,
back to
exactly.
you.
Like, what do you want to commit so you don't draw cards?
Yep.
All right. Speaking of Donald Duck, let's talk about Donald Duck Sleepwalker. He is a 3 cost inkable 0/5, 1 lore, with the ability Startled Awake. Whenever you play an action, this character gets +2 strength this turn. This definitely fits into the actions matters sub theme that we've seen in Emerald up to this point. I don't. It's hard for me to say that he gains or that he sees a lot of play, but I think he could fill out the curve in that type of deck fairly nicely.
Yeah, I have been looking at these cards, and I will say one thing I've noticed about them is they get very scary when you have a wide board because you just need to play that one action and it procs all of them.
Right.
So they're all gaining their
True. That's
benefits.
true. You get a couple of these down, and that's definitely something to deal with because with a 5 body, he's doing work.
Yeah, doing work. Definitely one of the ones that wants to gain the strength and challenge into
Yep,
something.
exactly.
It definitely wants to go with some of the actions that also increase its strength even further. So you're getting another +1 or +2 from the action as well. And that makes it a bit more solid uh, for a challenge. But just doing an action and just getting the +2, I don't think is quite enough. So I feel like you definitely want to buff them up more with the action card.
Sure. Sure, I can see that.
All right. So that'll bring us to Dr. Facilier, Fortune Teller, 7 cost Inkable, 4/4 with 3 lore. He's evasive, and he has the ability You're in my world. Whenever this character quests, chosen opposing character can't quest during their next turn. So, Mega Jasper.
Yep, yep. It's literally Mega Jasper, which not terrible. I wish he wasn't quite as expensive, but he does get evasive, so that's nice.
Yeah, the thing with this is it definitely too expensive. Comes a bit too late in the game to matter. We can already have this ability much earlier in the game with Jasper. If this said this happens when enters play and when he quests, then I think that would make him just so much better and much more worth being the 7 cost. Uh, you could do that and drop the evasive, and I think he would be much more playable.
Yeah, I think if you can cheat him out, like if you can put him in like Amber to cheat him out, then sure, he becomes a lot more viable. But like you said, if he doesn't do something when he enters the battlefield, he's going to get dealt with before he probably does anything. Let's face it, especially that late. So
Yeah, especially that late. Especially if you don't cheat him out by 7, that you're already in the range of Dragonfire, Hades, Sapphire Hades, and so many things that can just drop down and get rid of him before he has a chance to do anything.
right, exactly.
Yeah. So I just think he comes a bit too late and doesn't do anything immediately. Unfortunately, I love the character and I love the art. Like that's what's so hard about a lot of these. It's like I want to play these because they look so
It's
pretty.
true, and that's a lesson that a lot of people, especially a lot of the new players that are coming to TCGs, I want you guys to learn. If you play the cards you want to play, absolutely, but also remember that if you're forcing a card into a deck, it's not going to be running as good as it could be. So just play with what you want, absolutely, but don't get discouraged when you might not win as much as you want to. Just be aware. Because I'm a big advocate for that. Put the cards you want to play in a deck. Do it. Because that'll make you really, really happy doing that. And it might make you happier than winning, but also losing doesn't feel great, especially losing all the time. So it's a good
Yeah.
balance. You need to find a good balance, you know? All right. Now that I ranted a bit, let's move on to Enchantress, Unexpected Judge. She's a 2 cost, inkable 1/1 with 2 lore, with true form. While being challenged, this character gets +2 strength. So you're turning her sideways to gain 2 lore. When somebody cracks back into her, she's actually a 3/1, is essentially what we got here. And I'm going to fully admit, this is one of the few times I had to go and look up who this was because I didn't know that this character's name, and I didn't know what movie she came from.
I did the same thing, and once I found out, I was ashamed because I love Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast has never been one of my favorite Disney movies. Don't get me wrong, I do like it. It's really good. Beast was always like
Oh,
a
yeah,
really cool, like he's one of the characters that like little boys could get behind when they were watching. He's like,
right.
"Oh, big brute monster guy. I like this guy." But
Yeah.
that was kind of where it ended for me. So like, and then like you said, once I went and looked, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember," because it's in like a flashback, like that happens in the
Yeah,
movie.
within the first
Yeah,
5 minutes of the
exactly.
movie,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, I think she sees a little play.
I actually think she's a solid 2 drop for Emerald decks. Yeah. Not so great for some early ping decks and stuff like that. Things that can ping her out of existence, but for the ones that have to challenge into her, yeah, definitely doesn't feel great.
Exactly. Like you don't feel good playing this into steel, but I think that might be the only color you really don't want to play this into. Every other color I think is kind of safe because that early they have to sacrifice something essentially to get rid of her. So
Yeah. So let's not get on to our favorite rogue here with Flynn Rider, Confident Vagabond. Uh, this is our 1 cost inkable 1/3 with 1 lore. Vanilla.
what happened? Did you lose track of what you're doing?
No, I just said
Yep.
vanilla.
That's about all there is to say about that, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, it is nice. I would have loved to have this card last set, but now with the ability to pair it with resist from cards with resist and sapphire, gives the twos a bit more survivability to fight against steel. But maybe I'll run a few copies. Otherwise, you're keeping them around to play the other Flynn.
And I think that's exactly what he is. He, in addition to being like our Emerald Olaf, essentially, he is a good target for our next card that we're going to talk about. And I kind of feel like this one, the 1/3 for 1 Flynn Rider, I think that's Eugene. I think that's as Eugene as it gets right there. Isn't that his real
Yeah.
name, Eugene Fitzherbert?
Yep. Yep.
Love it. I love that. Um, all right. So our next card is also Flynn Rider, but this one is his own biggest fan. And I also actually before let's pump the brakes here. Let's talk about probably the only really good part about that last card is the fact that the art showcases the arts from the other versions of Flynn in this set
And last
and
set
last
too,
set too.
right?
Yeah, I think it does all of them up to this point, which that's just such a cool nod to not only the character but the game itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely loved that. And I, especially when we got him so early in the reveal season, we were all speculating what that middle poster
Right. Yep.
was.
It's like, oh, we know we're gonna like. All right, we saw that, we've seen that one already, so we know we're gonna get that one at some point. All right, so let's move on to the next Flynn for real this time. Flynn Rider is on biggest fan. He is a 4 cost uninkable 2/3 with shift 2, 4 lore, evasive, and the ability one last big score. This character gets -1 lore for each card in your opponent's hand. This card, you play this card late, he's cleaning up. You play this card late, and if you've had the chance to like really tax your opponent's hand, this card is doing work.
I personally feel like he's a bit of a trap, but well, it all just depends on how the hand control package comes together and plays out, and if it's good enough. And then we have another card that we'll talk about later that takes advantage of his lore count that's printed on his
It's true.
card. And so we'll get to that when we get there. But
Absolutely.
I think you'll see some play. But I think kind of like the other Bell, I don't know if I would run all 4 copies in the deck.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you can't always guarantee that you will be able to get the hand low enough to not be losing out on a lot of lore because they don't need many cards in hand to make him just a 2 or 1 lore quester.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's gonna take some experimenting to see if we can get that to be
It's
consistent.
true. It's true. You're not wrong.
So let's just move on to someone else who wants your opponent to have no cards in hand. Gaston, Scheming Suitor, 2-cost inkable 1/3 with 1 lore, with the ability, yes, I'm intimidating. While one or more opponents have no cards in their hands, this character gets +3 strength. The main benefit that I see for this card is he's a great shift target for Sapphire Gaston.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I don't think that his ability and stats stand on their own. I think he is just a really, really viable target for the shift Gaston. Also, real creepy. Like the art, he's I don't know if intimidating is the right word, Gaston. I think like creeper might be the right word here because you looking suspect, my friend. That's all I know.
Especially in the middle of the woods. What are you doing in the
Yeah,
middle of the woods looking
yeah, in
like
dress
that?
clothes, looking all creepy. Come on, in your formal attire.
I think the condition is too harsh for his
Yeah,
ability. Because there's no way you're gonna play him on 2 and then have your opponent's card hand empty on 3, unless they're aggro deck that played out a bunch of 1-drops the first few turns. I don't think that's very likely.
see, I would have liked to have seen something closer to when one or more of your opponents discards a card, it gets +1, something like that would have been cool. And it could have been a little more viable. It could have been a little more explosive, and it wouldn't have been so hard to get some sort of benefit out of it.
Yeah.
But I don't design cards. I just talk about them with my buddies on a podcast. All right. So our next card is Little John, Loyal Friend. Is a 6-drop, inkable, 6 strength, 6 willpower, 2 lore, vanilla. Meh. That's kind of how I feel about him.
Yeah, indeed. Solid body for draft if you get that high in lore. I mean,
Yep.
ink.
Yep.
But yeah,
Something here,
he's just
man,
solid.
here's actually something to talk about this card is this. I learned a really fun fact very recently is that a ton of the animations um for the Jungle Book were used for Robin Hood or vice versa. I don't remember which one came first, but a
Oh,
ton of the animations got recycled for both of them, so I think that was pretty cool.
oh yeah, there are several examples of recycled animations throughout Disney movies. It's a fun rabbit hole to go down if you're interested in that sort of thing.
Yep, but that's Little John.
All right, next one is Lucifer, Cunning Cat, 5-cost, uninkable, 2/2 with 2 lore, with the ability Mouse Catcher. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and discards either 2 cards or 1 action card. So, solid
Sure,
ability.
yeah. I like how it pulls double duty of punishing you more if you don't have actions to play.
Yeah. So, actions matters decks kind of want to play against this question mark.
More than anybody else does, I think. I do like how it's when you play this character. So like, if you want to get silly and bounce it, then you can totally do that and do it again and again and again. So
Yeah, definitely fun to bounce target, but if you get to pull it off that often, we'll have to wait and
yeah,
see if someone can
yeah,
pull some
yeah,
shenanigans
she is
there.
pretty expensive. So I mean, pretty expensive for a really bad stat line for that price. I know she has 2 lore. You're not going to get more than just the 2 lore off of her. I think it would be better to use Emerald's bounce abilities to bounce her as opposed to like trying to pair up with Amber and trying to recur her. So we'll see.
I'm pretty sure Lucifer is a boy cat.
Is Lucifer really?
I mean, Lucifer is, well, we're family friendly here. So
That's fair. I don't know why I assumed it was a girl. That's a good point. I
it,
was thinking Lucy, I
it is.
guess maybe. So all right. And actually, I do want to say this. There's actually a trend that I've noticed in Lorcana, at least in this set, a lot of the cat based characters are actually really, really good. I don't know if that was on purpose or accident, but yeah,
Yeah, we did just see Cheshire
yeah.
Cat, and
A
yeah,
couple of really good ones in Ruby, at least one good one in Amber. Like, yeah, some real good cats. So if you like cats, you're in luck with this set.
yeah,
Our next card is Pain, Underworld Imp. He is a 2-cost inkable 1/4. Oh, I get to say this line. That makes me really happy. With the ability coming your most lugubriousness. While this character has 5 strength or more, he gets +2 lore. He pairs up really, really well with the next card that Blake is going to read. 5 strength isn't that hard to get. It's really not. So, I mean, he could definitely see play in maybe a weird support shell or something like that. Because, like, you don't necessarily need hit the other card he clearly pairs with, but obviously the other card will make it a little easier. And let's you go
yeah.
ahead and introduce that so we can talk about them both.
Oh yeah, sure. Uh, that next card is Panic, Underworld Imp, which I think this is the first instance of two cards sharing the same
You're right.
subtitle.
I think you're right.
Yeah, which is pretty interesting. He is a 3-cost uninkable 2/3 with 2 lore, with the ability I can handle it. When you play this character, chosen character gets +2 strength this turn. If the chosen character is named Pain, he gets +4 strength instead. So obviously you play him with Pain.
Yep, you basically, from what it looks like to me, is you play Pain turn 2, Panic turn 3, Quest for 3 lore.
Yep, which I think may be the earliest that we can quest for 3
Might
lore.
be. It might be. Yeah. I like them together. I don't know that they'll see a lot of play outside of limited. They could, like I said, Pain especially could see a spot in a support build if support wanted to lean in that Emerald, which I don't think it really does anyway.
I mean, I'll talk about this later and maybe
Oh,
have a video about it.
oh,
I may be working on a
oh,
deck with
see?
this supposed support
And that's a
build.
segue
Uh,
right there, ladies and gentlemen. I love to hear it, though. I love to hear that. I look forward to it. I'm sure our audience does too.
oh yeah, it. I definitely don't know if it's going to be a viable competitive one, but it's shaping up to be a fun deck, and I can't wait to talk about it. So, but speaking of guys who want to be supported and all that, you want to talk about our
I
next guy?
absolutely do. I'm actually very, very excited for our next card. This is Pete, bad guy. I don't know if you could have a more generic title than that, but he nailed it. He is a 5-cost inkable 3/4 with 2 lore, ward. The ability take that whenever you play an action, this character gets +2 strength this turn. And who's next? While this character has 7 strength or more, he gets +2 lore. Not hard to play 2 actions in a turn. He's got ward. He can quest for 4 under the right circumstances. Not quite as good as Cusco, but I think he has a spot right next to Cusco, personally.
Yeah, it, at his worst, he is Donald with reverse
Right.
stats.
Yep.
Yep, 3/4
Yep.
instead of 4
With the
3.
upside of being able to have 4 lore instead of 2.
Yep, and there's a lot of easy ways to get him to 7,
Yes.
especially with support. All you need is one 4 strength character to support him, and then even easier, you only need one action, and that action is vicious betrayal because he is a villain.
Oh,
He
ho,
would get the plus
you nailed
3
it.
and then the +2 strength from his ability. So that's +5 strength. So that gets him to 8. So he can, just from one action, you can get him to quest for lore.
Beautiful. You've been thinking about that.
I have been thinking about it.
There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I think he's gonna definitely see play personally. Like you said, it's just too easy to get him there, and he slots in right next to Cusco. Has that ward that everybody loves to see on your cards. Because let's face it, ward might be the strongest ability so far.
Yeah, it. Yeah, like I talked about in the turquoise high five deck profile, ward almost always guarantees that that character will get to quest the next turn.
Exactly. There's very few circumstances. Like there are so many times where I've played a Cusco and it just ends the game basically because there's really, unless they draw into essentially, like they have to get 2 swords or uh be prepared.
Be
Yeah, and
prepared.
that's really
Yeah.
all you can do. And same with him, 2 swords or a be prepared to get rid of him if he's not exerted.
Yep. But moving on to Prince John, greediest of all, 3 cost, uninkable, 1/2 with 2 lore, who also has a ward. There's so many ward characters in Emerald this time around.
Mhm. You'll love to see
Uh,
it.
with with the ability I sentence you. Whenever your opponent discards 1 or more cards, you may draw a card for each card discarded.
I love this personally.
Yes, this is a staple for discard decks, and even if you're not doing that much discard, you may still run a couple of him just so when you do play some discard cards, like like him on turn 3 and then Daisy on turn 4, you're setting yourself up to have some value.
Oh, a Daisy turn 4 or a You Have Forgotten Me turn 4? Come on.
Yep.
Anything like that is
Yep.
just beautiful. It makes sudden chill suddenly a lot better.
Oh yeah.
It makes one of the cards that we're going to talk about here, one of the actions we're going to talk about later on, it makes at least one of them quite a bit better. It was
Oh
already
yeah.
good, makes it even better.
Mhm.
I love him, and and what you got to understand is he stacks too, so like you can have more than one on the field, and you're gravy. And like I said, cats, man, cats are getting all the good cards. He's a cat. He
Yep.
might be
Yep.
an anthropomorphic cat, but he's a cat. All right. So our next card is Queen of Hearts, Quick Tempered. She is a 2-cost, uninkable, 1/2 with 2 lore. The ability Royal Rage. When you play this character, deal 1 damage to chosen damaged opposing character. I think she sees play in the Steel Emerald Damage Matters deck, along with Beast and Cheshire Cat. I think she fits right in there with them personally.
Hmm. Yeah, she's just kind of in a really weird spot for me. You definitely want to play her later. Um,
Yeah, you're not trying to
so
play her on turn 2 for sure.
yeah, I
Unless you were lucky enough to like get maybe Cannon's turn 1 on whatever they have out, you know? Who knows?
if it's a 1/3,
Yeah,
sure.
see?
I guess.
Oh, I'm not saying that. I'm not
That
saying that's a
feels
great play. I'm just saying it's a play. Yeah,
it's a
it's a
play.
play. I mean,
I,
but
I feel like that should be a shirt when we finally get merchant
that's a
stuff.
play.
It's a
It's a play.
play.
It's a play. I love that. Um, but yeah, like you said, she definitely wants to come down later. She doesn't want to come down on turn 2. Like it doesn't. Even if you did somehow chain 2 things together, it still wouldn't feel great. So
Yeah, the young inkable hurts as
you
well.
you basically you want to drop her after you have Beast already on the field and he's already quested, and then you drop her, bring him back up, quest again.
Yeah, we'll see if she makes it into that deck in the long
Yeah, we'll
run.
see.
Right. Let's see. Next one we have Radigan, Criminal Mastermind, a 4-cost inkable 4/1 with 2 lore and evasive. Definitely wish he had more willpower.
Yeah, I think the other. I think at this point, yeah, I know he has 2 lore, but I think that there are several other options at 4 cost and has evasive that just feel better to play. I know he's more like you don't really have him to quest, I don't think. I feel like you have him as like evasive, like protection, like to get rid of something they have with evasive. You know what I mean? Or you
Yeah,
quest and then they're forced to deal with it and get rid of something of their own.
yeah. That is such a challenger stat line.
It
Like,
really is. And something else I want to touch on too while we're here. I know a lot of us with set 1 underestimated 2 lore pips. Don't sleep on 2 lore. 2 lore can matter like a lot more than we have initially thought. So
Oh yeah.
Our next card is Ray, Easygoing Firefly. He is a 5-cost inkable 3/3 with 3 lore and evasive. I think that while this might not be the greatest card, it is a good card, and I think that it in a lot of places this knocks Mad Hatter out of decks. I think that this in a lot of places this is where you want to be. You want to be more like if this is in, let's say, Lemon Lime with the just in time package and stuff. You want this character with 3 lore and evasive to come down because you're trying to chase that lore. You don't really want Mad Hatter out there because you're hoping that you get swung into so you can maybe draw cards. Whereas this one is
Yeah.
like this is you drop it, and if you can just in time this on turn 3, there's very little they can do about it unless they hit it with removal. Like they're not challenging back into this, so you're probably going to get 6 lore off the guy.
Yeah. Unless you're facing steel, that's the big scary. But yeah, I didn't really think of being a replacement for Hatter, especially now that there's a lot more draw cards in every color, even Emerald. There's a lot more ways to draw. He may just as well replace Hatter in those
Yeah,
aggro decks.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because he's much more of an aggro piece. Yeah,
So we'll move on to the Queen, Disguised Peddler. 3 cost, uninkable 2/3 with no lore, but she's not reckless. She has the ability of perfect disguise. You exert her to choose and discard a card, and then you gain lore equal to the discarded character's lore.
scary.
Scary indeed. I know a lot of people's first reactions were the Floodborn Flynn Rider.
Yep. Yep, you said that earlier. This was the card you were alluding to. I get it now. I get it now cuz yeah, you discard that. That's 4 lore, baby. That's pretty good.
Yep, and I even saw statements of even poor Goofy has a spot index because of this.
uh, Emerald Steel Big Lore. I can get down with this, dude. Honestly, I was actually immediately thought in order for this to be as good as you want it to be, you really need I would want to see this in a color I can unexert. So I would think Emerald Ruby just so you can uh get her back up multiple times. So you can like hopefully discard like 2 or 3 cards and go up like 8 9 lore. Like that's the dream, you know.
Yeah, the other spot I thought of her was with Amber, and on turn 3 you play her, turn 4 you exert her, discard uh, 5 drop, especially with Emerald, you have so many 5 drops with 3 lore. Uh, discard your 5 drop, play Hades, bring the 5 drop back so you can play it on 5.
That's actually great. Honestly, that's really really great. I like where your head's at with that. And again though, I think if your opponent does see this hit the battlefield and you're starting to exert and discard cards and then rebound them like that, I definitely think she becomes a big target. So she'll fit best in whatever color can protect her the best, I think. But, only
Yeah.
time will tell.
Well, I mean, if she gets banished,
Yeah.
you're already running
It's true.
Hades.
Just get her right back.
Hades are
It's
back.
true.
Yeah.
It's true. You got me there, sir. So yeah, maybe Emerald Amber wow, that would be gross. I love it. All right. So our next card kind of fits in with everything we were just talking about with the Queen. Tiana, True Princess. She is a 5-cost inkable 5/3, 3 lore vanilla. I really like her stat line. I love that she's a 5/3, so you're gonna drop her quest for 3 lore and then have fun challenging back into me. Like probably anything you throw at me is gonna go down.
Basically, Donald giving up the ward for another lore and one more
Yep. Yep.
strength. Wow. Now that I think
It's
about
true.
it.
Ward is weighted pretty heavily. They I think they know what they're doing with their like balancing. Although I do think that Pete almost should have been uninkable, but that's my opinion.
I'll take them as inkable.
Right, right. I love it. Don't get me wrong, I love it, but yeah, that's kind of it for Tiana, I think.
So we'll move on to
Do you have pronunciations written down?
nope.
I was gonna say, are you gonna outdo me like that?
I just watched this
Oh,
movie.
did
I
you?
trying to remember. I believe it's Verana, Fang Chief, 5 cost, inkable 5/5 with 2 lore. And this is the card that started the whole power creep argument.
Why don't you expand on that a
Uh,
little bit?
yeah, basically we have from set 1, Jumpa, who I believe is a 4/5 with 2 lore at the same cost and inkable. So basically, uh, 1 strength more.
Mm, okay.
So much power creep.
I mean, if that's if that's the one example that people can find, or like one of the main examples people can find, they can have it. If that feels like a victory, then you can have it.
uh,
Because I mean, yeah,
yeah,
in the strict sense of it, yes, you are absolutely right. That is quote unquote power creep, but if that's what we have to look forward to, like that kind of stuff happening, I'm all for it.
yeah, but another thing I'd like to bring up in this particular scenario is I think in the future we're going to get a lot more subtype matters cards.
Okay, okay.
So we're
She is a queen.
more card. Yep. Uh, and I'm sure at some point we're going to see that something that cares about
Oh
inventors
yeah,
and
there would be no reason to call them
allies.
that if not. There's no reason to.
Right.
And the fact, and that's what I thought about, like when we first saw like full cards and got to see descriptive titles like that. I was like, oh, that's cool. They're thinking ahead because they know they're going to need they know they're going to need and or want something like that down the road, and they're going to want a way to distinguish certain pieces as a group away from the rest of the cards, and that's the best way to do it. All right, so
On to the fun
yeah,
stuff.
let's move on to actions now. I mean, I was probably when I saw this card, I got really excited. Not only for the fact that it's such an iconic song. We have Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, which is a 3-cost uninkable song that says return chosen character of yours to your hand to play another character with the same cost or less for free. And yes, there has been confirmation that you can, in fact, just play the same character you bounced because it's the same
Yep.
cost or less for free. That's all it cares about. It doesn't have to be a different card at all, which is kind of fun, especially when you take into account all of the different, very strong enters and exit abilities that we have seen, especially with set 2. Set 1 had a decent amount of them too, but set 2 has really stepped it up as far as cards when they doing stuff when they enter and when they leave, which is great. Everybody knows that in Lorcana, if it doesn't do something when it enters, it automatically gets knocked down like a letter grade for as good as it can be. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I love it. I love this card. I think it's going to be great. I think the art's great. I think it's really cool that Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo is also Emerald. I would not have expected that because it's very much like a
Yep.
goody two shoes type song.
That and the movie is so
Mm-hmm.
blue.
Yep.
I thought Cinderella would have been all over in Sapphire, but nope.
Turns out.
Here it
Yep.
is in
Turns
Emerald.
out. And it's at rare, so it's not going to be impossible to get your hands on, which is another great thing. It can act as removal. It absolutely, or well, I mean, no, it has to be. I was thinking of the next card we were talking about.
Yep.
So
Yep.
forget I said that, and let's move on to the next card.
Speaking of bounce is a 2 cost unequal action, which lets you return chosen character of yours to your hand to return another chosen character to their player's hand. So I heard you like bounce decks, so here's a bounce to put in your
I
bounce
love it
deck.
personally. I love the fact that we got a card called Bounce to give just to give this archetype its name. It's really fun. I love it when games do that. Several other different games do that. Magic's very famous for naming whole decks after one card, and I think it's safe to say that there's an archetype and it's going to be called bounce. Like that's because that's what you're doing. You're just bouncing stuff, and I love it.
Yeah, and like you said, this one can be used as
Yeah,
removal
or
or
just for your
bouncing.
stuff. You bounce two of your
Yeah,
things, and you have. Let's say you have any pretty much any of the Merlins you're going to play. So like if you have Merlin Goat, or Merlin Rabbit out there, return them both. Why not? Like
yeah,
another fun thing for that would be you use bounce to return two of your guys, like let's say even two goats. Let's say you gain two lore that way because they left the battlefield. And then you have, like, say you have shift Madam Mim, that's an amethyst out there. Then you just exert her, play the goat, gain a lore. It has rush, challenge in, it gets banished, leaves, gain another lore. Lots of real fun stuff, and I cannot wait to play test.
yeah. Balance is definitely one of the things we'll be looking at a lot this set, I think.
Yep. So, move on to our next card. Not quite as impressive, but still, I like this card a lot. The art's phenomenal. It's Hypnotize. It is a 3-cost inkable action that says each opponent chooses and discards a card. Draw a card. This is the card that I was referring to earlier when we were talking about Prince John. Essentially, you play this card and then draw as many cards that are discarded because of Prince John, and then an extra card, which is just always awesome. So,
Definitely solid, definite card advantage for you, and definitely great in multiplayer, especially with Little John. Yeah. Ooh, I get this one. So our next one is Improvise, which is a one-cost inkable action. Chosen character gains one strength this turn. Draw a card.
I like this card. I like it was a great scene in the movie. I thought her dueling him with using a paper fan. That's pretty awesome.
But yeah, just solid one cost. Give something to strength and draw a card. I mean, what's not to like?
Exactly, exactly. You can pretty much tack on draw a card to anything and make it good. So
Yeah. And then for the actions matters cards,
Pete
most
loves
of them
this.
get. Pete likes it. He loves vicious betrayal
Yeah,
more.
that's true. That's true. That's true.
But for the other ones, they do get +3 strength, which is a lot nicer than one
Right. True. True. True.
for those actions matters ones. So at 3-5 for Donald, like
Right.
that makes him pretty solid.
That's true. That's a good point. It's a very good point. All right. So this next card is another one that I'm actually really, really excited about. This seems like a really, really fun card to play. We have Pack Tactics, which is a 4-cost inkable action that says gain 1 lore for each damaged character opponents have in play. In multiplayer, this could end a game.
Yeah.
In single player, this could come close to ending a game or end a game, honestly, because like if you're playing an opponent that's going wide and they all have like a damage on them, say from Big Tink, drop this and then you gain 5 lore for 4 ink. That's a really good trade in my opinion. And I think,
Oh
like I
yeah.
said, it gets infinitely better in multiplayer, but I think even in constructed, this will see a decent amount of play in the damage matters archetype.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if this gets limited to like one
I could see
in
it.
like multiplayer
I could see it.
formats
I
in the
could see it,
future.
dude. I could definitely see it because this is just in multiplayer. Like again, all it takes is Big Tink, and or a grab your sword, and then you play this, and I just gained 16 lore. Like
Yeah,
not hard to do in a multiplayer game, really not. So
especially depending on how many players you're playing
exactly,
with.
because
Yeah.
I automatically when I think of the multiplayer, I automatically always think of a 4-player game. But you're right, there is no upper limit of how many players you can play this game with. So potentially, you could see if you had enough players, you could just close the game out with one.
Yep.
That's nuts.
All right, so let's move on to Ring the Bell. 3-cost inkable action that lets you banish chosen damage character. Not a terrible action, especially for Emerald, who usually has trouble finishing things off. And it's especially good in the ping deck. Like, I know you usually want to, for that deck, I think you usually want to keep things on the board to keep pinging, but sometimes you might have something that you just need to get rid of.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think this would feel a lot better as a song. It does do, like you said, it does do something that Emerald has needed up to this point. I think every other piece of Emerald removal is just bounce. This is its
Yeah,
only true banish. It's its only true, really real, like it's gone for like a while. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I think it'll see play. I really do. I think this sees play instead of Mother Knows Best in certain builds.
yeah.
Even though you can sing Mother Knows Best, I still think like I said, in like that steel emerald pinging damage matters. I'm playing swords and big tinks and stuff like that. This card does work, so think it sees play in that for sure. All right, so our last card of Emerald and our only item. I didn't realize that Emerald only had one item. I guess it makes sense though. It's not the emerald. It's not the item heavy color. We have Radigan's Marvelous Trap. It's a 3-cost uninkable item that says Snap, Boom, Twang. Banish this item. Each opponent loses 2 lore. I don't love this card yet, but if we start seeing things that care about your opponent losing lore, this gets much better. And I mean, in multiplayer, you're paying 3 to make everybody lose 2, which is never bad. So
Yeah, yeah, not the worst. I mean, currently you play, well, actually, little Aladdin costs 2, right?
I think he does, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, one more ink to make everyone lose 2. Yeah. And it can just sit on the board and until you're ready to set that off.
Yeah, because I don't think anybody's going to waste, if they even have it, I don't think anybody's going to waste an item removal on this piece. They're going to be waiting for something else that somebody else is probably playing in like an items matter deck. Because this doesn't feel like an items matter card even, because you're
No.
banishing it. You're getting rid of it to use it.
Yeah. Usually the items matter stuff wants to keep the stuff on the board. So, yeah.
True that.
Right now, I think mainly it's just a multiplayer piece.
Yep, I would agree. If you're going to be an Emerald playing multiplayer shenanigans like Pack Tactics, you might as well have that in there too, you know? Like you put yourself ahead 14 and put everybody back 2. That's basically you put yourself ahead 16. So let's go.
Yep.
All right, that was the last card in Emerald. Do you have any final thoughts about the color, Blake?
Just really loving what we got this set and really looking forward to crafting decks with all of the potential things that Emerald is bringing us.
Yeah, I think that I really love what they've done with especially Emerald in this set. They've actually fleshed it out to be a lot more than just challenge into me, you won't like it. And
Yeah.
I think that's I found Emerald's one of my favorite colors. I find it very interesting, and I just find it even more interesting now that we have even more options to do fun things that people aren't going to enjoy. Oh man,
It's definitely still the degenerate
it
color.
is. Oh, for sure it is. It just gets to be degenerate in different ways now.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. It's been a blast. Thank you all for listening to the Glimmer Gang podcast, and remember, glimmer on.